Bible in a Year Live, Chronological Project, Week 11, Day 5, Good News Translation, concerning women prisoners of war. When the Lord your God gives you victory in battle and you take prisoners, you may see among them a beautiful woman that you like and want to marry. Take her to your home, where she will shave her head, cut her fingernails, and change her clothes. She is to stay in your home and mourn for her parents for a month. After that, you may marry her. Later, if you no longer want her, you are to let her go free. Since you forced her to have intercourse with you, you cannot treat her as a slave and sell her. Concerning the first son's inheritance. Suppose a man has 2 wives, and they both bear him sons, but the first son is not the child of his favorite wife. When the man decides how he is going to divide his property among his children, he is not to show partiality to the son of his favorite wife by giving him the share that belongs to the firstborn son. He is to give a double share of his possessions to his first son, even though he is not the son of his favorite wife. A man must acknowledge his first son and give him the share he is legally entitled to. Concerning a disobedient son. Suppose someone has a son who is stubborn and rebellious, a son who will not obey his parents, even though they punish him. His parents are to take him before the leaders of the town where he lives and make him stand trial. They are to say to them, "Our son is stubborn and rebellious and refuses to obey us. He wastes money and is a drunkard." Then the men of the city are to stone him to death, and so you will get rid of this evil. Everyone in Israel will hear what has happened and be afraid. Various laws. If someone has been put to death for a crime and the body is hung on a post, it is not to remain there overnight. It must be buried the same day, because a dead body hanging on a post brings God's curse on the land. Bury the body so that you will not defile the land that the Lord your God is giving you. If you see an Israelite's cow or sheep running loose, do not ignore it. Take it back. But if its owner lives a long way off, or if you don't know who owns it, then take it home with you. When its owner comes looking for it, give it to him. Do the same thing if you find a donkey, a piece of clothing, or anything else that an Israelite may have lost. If an Israelite's donkey or cow has fallen down, don't ignore it. Help him get the animal to its feet again. Women are not to wear men's clothing, and men are not to wear women's clothing. The Lord your God hates people who do such things. If you happen to find a bird's nest in a tree or on the ground with the mother bird sitting either on the eggs or with her young, you are not to take the mother bird. You may take the young birds, but you must let the mother bird go, so that you will live a long and prosperous life. When you build a new house, be sure to put a railing around the edge of the roof. Then you will not be responsible if someone falls off and is killed. Do not plant any crop in the same field with your grapevines. If you do, you are forbidden to use either the grape or the produce of the other crop. Do not hitch an ox and a donkey together for plowing. Do not wear cloth made by weaving wool and linen together. Sew tassels on the 4 corners of your clothes. Laws concerning sexual purity. Suppose a man marries a young woman and later he decides he doesn't want her. So he makes up false charges against her, accusing her of not being a virgin when they got married. If this happens, the young woman's parents are to take the blood-stained wedding sheet that proves she was a virgin, and they are to show it in court to the town leaders. Her father will say to them, "I gave my daughter to this man in marriage, and now he doesn't want her. He has made false charges against her, saying that she was not a virgin when he married her. But here is the proof that my daughter was a virgin. Look at the bloodstains on the wedding sheet." Then the town leaders are to take the husband and beat him. They are also to fine him 100 pieces of silver and give the money to the young woman's father, because the man has brought disgrace on an Israelite woman. Moreover, she will continue to be his wife, and he can never divorce her as long as he lives. But if the charge is true, and there is no proof that she was a virgin, then they are to take her out to the entrance of the father's house, where the men of her city are to stone her to death. She has done a shameful thing among our people by having intercourse before she was married, while she was still living in her father's house. In this way, you will get rid of this evil. If a man is caught having intercourse with another man's wife, both of them are to be put to death. In this way, you will get rid of this evil. Suppose a man is caught in a town having intercourse with a young woman who is engaged to someone else. You are to take them outside the town and stone them to death. She is to die because she did not cry out for help. although she's in a town where she could have been heard. And the man is to die because he had intercourse with someone who was engaged. In this way, you will get rid of this evil. Suppose a man out in the countryside rapes a young woman who is engaged to someone else. Then only the man is to be put to death. Nothing is to be done to the woman because she has not committed a sin worthy of death. This case is the same as when one man attacks another man and murders him. The man raped the engaged woman in the countryside, and although she cried for help, there was no one to help her. Suppose a man is caught raping a young woman who is not engaged. He is to pay her father the bride price of 50 pieces of silver, and she is to become his wife, because he forced her to have intercourse with him. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. No one is to disgrace his father by having intercourse with any of his father's wives. Exclusion from the Lord's people. No one who has been castrated or whose penis has been cut off may be included among the Lord's people. No one born out of wedlock or any descendant of such a person, even in the 10th generation, may be included among the Lord's people. No Ammonites or Moabites or any of their descendants, even in the 10th generation, may be included in the Lord's people. They refused to provide you with food and water when you were on your way out of Egypt, and they hired Balaam son of Beor from the city of Pethor in Mesopotamia to curse you. But the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam. Instead, he turned the curse into a blessing because he loved you. As long as you are a nation, never do anything to help these nations or to make them prosperous. Do not despise the Edomites, they are your relatives, and do not despise the Egyptians, you once lived in their land. From the 3rd generation onward, their descendants may be included among the Lord's people. Keeping the military camp clean. When you are in camp in time of war, you are to avoid anything that would make you ritually unclean. If a man becomes unclean because he has had a wet dream during the night, he is to go outside the camp and stay there. Toward evening, he is to wash himself, and at sunset, he may come back into camp. You are to have a place outside the camp where you can go when you need to relieve yourself. Carry a stick as part of your equipment, so that when you have a bowel movement, you can dig a hole and cover it. Keep your camp ritually clean, because the Lord your God is with you in your camp to protect you and to give you victory over your enemies. Do not do anything indecent that would cause the Lord to turn his back on you. Various laws. If slaves run away from their owners and come to you for protection, do not send them back. They may live in any of your towns that they choose, and you are not to treat them harshly. No Israelite, man or woman, is to become a temple prostitute. Also, no money earned in this way may be brought into the house of the Lord your God in fulfillment of a vow. The Lord hates temple prostitutes. When you lend money or food or anything else to Israel, do not charge them interest. You may charge interest on what you lend to foreigners, but not on what you lend to Israelites. Obey this rule, and the Lord your God will bless everything you do in the land that you are going to occupy. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, do not put off doing what you promised. The Lord will hold you to your vow, and it is a sin not to keep it. It is no sin not to make a vow to the Lord, but if you make one voluntarily, be sure to keep it. When you walk along the path in someone else's vineyard, you may eat all the grapes you want, but you must not carry any away in a container. When you walk along a path in someone else's grain field, you may eat all the grain you can pull off with your hand, but you must not cut any grain with a sickle. Divorce and remarriage. Suppose a man marries a woman and later decides that he doesn't want her because he finds something about her that he dislikes. So he writes out divorce papers, gives them to her, and sends her away from his home. Then suppose she marries another man, and he also decides that he doesn't want her. So he also writes out divorce papers, gives them to her, and sends her away from his home. Or suppose her second husband dies. In either case, her first husband is not to marry her again. He is to consider her defiled. If he married her again, it would be offensive to the Lord. You are not to commit such a terrible sin in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Various laws. When a man is newly married, he is not to be drafted into military service or any other public duty. He is to be excused from duty for 1 year so that he can stay at home and make his wife happy. When you lend someone something, you are not to take as security his millstones used for grinding his grain. This would take away the family's means of preparing food to stay alive. If any of you kidnap Israelites and make them your slaves or sell them into slavery, you are to be put to death. In this way, your nation will get rid of this evil. When you are suffering from a dreaded skin disease, be sure to do exactly what the Levitical priests tell you. Follow the instructions that I have given them. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam as you were coming from Egypt. When you lend someone something, do not go into his house to get the garment he is going to give you as a security. Wait outside and let him bring it to you himself. If he is poor, do not keep it overnight. Return it to him each evening so that he can have it to sleep in. Then he will be grateful and the Lord your God will be pleased with him. Do not cheat poor and needy hired servants, whether they are Israelites or foreigners living in one of your towns. Each day before sunset, pay them for the day's work. They need the money and have counted on getting it. If you do not pay them, they will cry out against you to the Lord, and you will be guilty of sin. Parents are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their children, and children are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their parents. People are to be put to death only for a crime they themselves have committed. Do not deprive foreigners and orphans of their rights, and do not take a widow's garment as security for a loan. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God set you free. That is why I have given you this command. When you gather your crops and fail to bring in some of the grain that you have cut, do not go back for it. It is to be left for the foreigners, orphans, and widows, so that the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. When you have picked your olives once, do not go back and get those that are left. They are for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. When you have gathered your grapes once, do not go back over the vines a second time. The grapes that are left are for the foreigners, orphans, and widows. Never forget that you were slaves in Egypt. This is why I have given you this command. Suppose two Israelites go to court to settle a dispute, and one is declared innocent and the other guilty. If the guilty one is sentenced to be beaten, the judge is to make him lie face down and have him whipped. The number of lashes will depend on the crime he has committed. He may be given as many as 40 lashes, but no more. More than that would humiliate him publicly. Do not muzzle an ox when you are using it to thresh grain. Duty to a dead brother. If two brothers live on the same property and one of them dies, leaving no son, then his widow is not to be married to someone outside the family. It is the duty of the dead man's brother to marry her. The first son that they have will be considered the son of the dead man, so that the family line will continue in Israel. But if the dead man's brother does not want to marry her, she is to go before the town leaders and say, "My husband's brother will not do his duty. He refuses to give his brother a descendant among the people of Israel." Then the town leaders are to summon him and speak to him. If he still refuses to marry her, his brother's widow is to go up to him in the presence of the town leaders, take off one of his sandals, spit in his face, and say, "This is what happens to the man who refuses to give his brother a descendant." His family will be known in Israel as the family of the man who had his sandal pulled off. Other laws. If two men are having a fight and the wife of one tries to help her husband by grabbing hold of the other man's genitals, show her no mercy and cut off her hand. Do not cheat when you use weights and measures. Use true and honest weights and measures so that you may live a long time in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. The Lord hates people who cheat. The command to kill the Amalekites. Remember what the Amalekites did to you as you were coming from Egypt. They had no fear of God, and so they attacked you from the rear when you were tired and exhausted and killed all who were straggling behind. So then, when the Lord your God has given you the land and made you safe from all your enemies who live around you, be sure to kill all the Amalekites, so that no one will remember them any longer. Do not forget.